Welcome to Post Games, a podcast about why and how we love video games. I am your host, Chris Plant, and I am so very glad to have you here. It's the end of summer, and I have many traditional episodes that are cooking. I'm really tempted to tell you some of the guests we have coming up, but I do want them to be a surprise. I can't wait to share that with you. This week is a little bit different. I'm answering your questions about the future of video games. And I'm also interviewing my friend, Brendon Bigley. He just launched the podcast video series and a bit of everything else publication, Wavelengths. It is a fascinating time to launch a video game publication, as I can attest. So it was exciting to talk with Brendon about why he left a stable career at Disney and Marvel to make something his own, to make something fresh. I'll be doing these episodes now and then, a little looser, a little shaggier, a little bit more of a hangout, but still hopefully capturing that post-games flavor. It serves a bunch of purposes. Some people like the chill-out vibes. I have some more space and time to work on future heavy lift projects. I get to hear from you and introduce you to people that I think you'll love, like Brendon. I hope you enjoy it. This week on Post Games, the future of video games and video games media. Act 1, The Prophecies. Many listeners sent great questions about the future of video games, and I provide the answers to the best of my ability. For patrons, I'm extending this section. So many questions, so many answers. I hope you like hearing my opinion. Act 2, How to Launch a New Video Games Media Brand. I interview Brendon Bigley about Wavelengths. We talk about the challenges of making a new video games media brand. And another bonus act for Patreon subscribers, Brendon shares how to make a podcast, a successful one. All of the tricks finally revealed. Brendon made a number of successful programs on Marvel and Disney's YouTube channel and elsewhere. So if there's somebody you want to hear advice from, it's him. And Act 3, of course, as always, the news of the week. It may be a chill-out show this week, but it is a meaty episode, thick and hearty, which is, the least appetizing thing to spoon onto someone's plate in the hottest days of summer. But you get the gist. How about we call it a big gulp full of juicy podcasting lemonade? Nice and iced and ready for slurping. What am I doing? Let's get to the show. It is a new year and you want to eat better, but you still have no time to work with. You have no energy. You have so much going on in your life. What do? You do Factor. 2 minutes, real food, and you are done. You're not failing at eating healthy. You're failing at having 3 extra hours in every night. You're failing at not being a chef and wanting to do cleanup. Factor takes care of that. It has delicious food that is good for you. You got lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and none of the yucky stuff, no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners. It will offer you whatever you need to match your lifestyle. For me, Mediterranean diet, it really works well. But maybe you need something else, like a high-protein diet or GLP-1 support or ready-to-eat salads. Whatever it is, Factor wants to meet you on your page. Always fresh, never frozen, and like I said, ready in 2 minutes with no prep, no cleanup, just chill. I use Factor. I think that you should too. Head to factormeals.com/postgames, 50 off, and use code postgames50 off to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for a year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscriptions purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Act 1, The Future of Video Games, a Q&A.
Hi, Maddie Myers here, freelance writer, co-host of a podcast that's called Triple Click. It's also about video games. Anyway, here's my question. What do you think is the future of physical game ownership? Is it becoming trendy again? Should it become trendy again? I think so. And are there going to be independent creators of really cool ways to store your physical media again? I don't really care about those IKEA shelves or whatever was cool when I was still storing physical media. I want to get back into it. What does that look like physically in our home?
Okay. This one I feel like I could talk about forever. First, is physical game ownership going to come back as a trend? Yes, definitely, but in a boutique way. In the same way that Blu-rays and 4K discs are back, right? The trend is here. We have amazing labels, not just Criterion anymore, but things like Arrow and Radiance and Vinegar Syndrome. So many great labels, big and small. It is a micro industry, a cottage industry, whatever you'd like to call it. People shouldn't be confused that like, oh, this is a great moment for physical media. It's a great moment in that there are these boutique houses that are now able to get rights to a lot of things they probably couldn't get in the past because the original owners just don't really give too much of a shit. I'm curious if we will see something similar with video games, where a company like Square Enix already has the ability to get its games out to a wide audience via digital storefronts. They don't want to really risk the cost and all of the vendor management to create physical media, and they'll be more willing to work with places like Limited Run Games or Digital Eclipse on packages. So I think that there will be more. It will be trendy in the truest sense of the word, as in like it's like a cool trendy thing to do, but it won't be, filling up your Target or your Walmarts anytime soon. That said, how do you shelve these games? How do you present them, display them, store them? The best option for this sort of stuff is Etsy. Etsy is where you can see the on-ramp of a trend, and it is where everybody is testing out the ideas before they break big. I've been collecting vinyl records because I am that cliche, and early on, the best vinyl storage you could find was on Etsy. And now, West Elm or whatever has a variety of options for vinyl storage. It's a bigger, more popular hobby, I guess. But I think we are in the Etsy era of video game storage management, where you can find a lot of great options there versus having to make do with some random IKEA or other display case that isn't even really meant for this sort of stuff. But that is a great question. I'm curious if we will see more efforts to display games the same way that people display vinyl on their walls. And I'm also curious if we will see more special editions in which the game isn't even included, which seems contradictory. Like, I think there is a large contingent of people who are into this hobby of collecting physical games because they want to preserve them, they want to archive them. But I think there are also people who buy physical games because they just want a physical means of engaging with this thing that they love that feels in some weird way distant by being, locked behind their monitor or TV screen in a way that it just didn't in the past, right? That you could hold your favorite thing. It is weird, or it was weird for a time, how much I loved Nier Automata and then just didn't have a copy of it. Whenever people asked about it, it's like, well, I guess I could show it to you in my Steam library. That's not ideal. But great question. Thank you.
Hey, Chris. My name's Harrison, longtime listener, first-time caller. And my question is, why is Hideo Kojima seemingly the only auteur in the video game industry? Why has nobody else been able to reach the same cult status that he has? Thanks.
Hey, Harrison, this question rules, partly because I know there is a subset of listeners right now whose skin is crawling because they want to tell us that Sid Meier's is actually the big video game auteur, or Will Wright, or Ken Levine, or whoever else you could name. But I know what you're getting at here, because Hideo Kojima feels relevant in a way right now that those other developers don't necessarily. Sid Meier's, while still involved in games, feels almost like a stamp that gets put on a variety of different projects. Ken Levine hasn't shipped in forever. Will Wright, obviously, is no longer associated with The Sims and SimCity. But Hideo Kojima is active. And when you play a Kojima game, it feels in conversation with all of the other Kojima games that came before it. So this is all just to say that I know what you mean. I'm going to add a caveat in a moment about indie games, but let's stick to this. I think the reason that Kojima has been so successful with this auteur vision, and this is a lot of speculation, but I wonder if he approaches game development the way that a director of animation approaches an animated film. So, what do I mean by that? Wes Anderson made the Fantastic Mr. Fox movie, right? It's one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite Wes Anderson films, one of my favorite animated films. And right around when it came out, there was something of a hit piece written about Anderson, I think for either the New York Times or the New Yorker, about, wow, he was just never around. He wasn't available on set. And the reality is, yeah, of course, animation takes forever to accomplish. So you can set up the framing or the concept or the tone, and then you can trust that the animators will go off and do it. I think there are a lot of would-be auteurs in video games who try to capture the traditional directing model, which is I'm going to have my fingers in the pie at all times. I'm going to have my say on everything. And that's not a great way to make a video game, because they take a ton of time and a ton of people, and a lot of that time is just turning the idea into a reality. It's not nearly as instantaneous as shooting a film. So it's not a nice match. With Kojima, my theory, I guess, is you can see him on social media all the time just doing other stuff. He's seeing movies, he's reading books, he's hanging out with celebrities, he's going to events, he's doing all of this. He couldn't possibly be helicoptering video game development every moment of the day. I think it's telling that he's actually talked about, creating a USB drive full of ideas that could be entrusted even after he's dead. I think part of what actually makes him a good auteur, and again, this is pure theory crafting, because it's hard to know with how secretive game developers are. But it's actually the degree of hands-off, the degree of distance that he can have from a project, in that he knows what he wants. He gives that overarching guidance. People trust whatever he's saying is going to be interesting, and they're willing to make it. And then he steps away and goes and does the whole Kojima thing. I think that is a lot like, to go back to that Wes Anderson model, saying, hey, here's the frame that I want, here's the story that I want, here's the characters that I want, here's my scripting, and now you all can go and make it happen. And that makes it, one, more likely that the game will actually get made, two, that the game will be better because it's being left in the hands of people who actually know how to make a game, and three, allows him to consume all of that material. I don't think it can be understated that all of the reading, all the movies, all the music, all of the art that he's consuming is helpful for thus creating his own art. It is important that you are outliving the world if you are a creative, and it's hard to both be a nonstop game director and somebody who is out there experiencing all that life and art has to offer. So that is my generous read of this. I will also say, I think the real spot for auteurship in video games is the very small studio, if not outright solo developer. And I think that is where we do see a lot of alternatives. Nina Freeman comes to mind as one of the best known people to do this. Nina made games like How Do You Do It, Sybil, We Met in May. These are games deeply rooted in personal experience and personal history, and they all feel, again, of a piece of a conversation with Nina's life. I think of Anna Anthropy's games, Mighty Jilloff, Dysphoria. When you play an Anna Anthropy game, it feels like the Anna Anthropy game. It has a perspective. It has a voice. It has something to say that is holistic. And I think that is a thing that you can do in the indie game space, in the solo dev space, especially if you are making these smaller games that allow you to build up a portfolio of work. Again, hard to be an auteur if you're only shipping, once every 8 years.
Hi, my name's Lloyd. I'm from Glasgow. My question is, with a not insignificant portion of game sales just now coming from remakes and remasters, do you think that's going to follow basically millennials? Because kids just now are playing games like Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft. They can't really feed into nostalgia by remaking those. So the kind of current trend of remakes and remasters, does it just essentially follow millennials as we get older, constantly remaking the same games?
Yeah, I feel like my third eye is opened by this question. What would it mean to remake Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite? Can you even do that? You're right. It's complicated for so many reasons. The projects are just so big. So if you wanted to remake them, impossible. They're constantly remaking themselves already, right? There's a nostalgia in Fortnite for the original map. That's what a remake is in Fortnite. You think about Roblox and how there are these micro trends, these games of the week, that most of them are not great, but they're good enough to gain a little bit of attention for a short period of time. And then all of the young players move on to whatever the next hot fad is. And what is nostalgia for when really what you're talking about is a whole bunch of one-off television specials, basically? Are we going to have players who miss a very specific, tiny little game in Roblox? I don't know. There is this atomization of popular culture and of our kind of collective cultural memory happening that there's not a great comparison for. In the past, there could be a UFO special on Fox in the 1990s, and people would be talking about UFOs for like the next year because it was just on one of the 5 or 6 channels that everybody have, and it retained the public interest. There could be controversies that lasted for years. And now there's just so much stuff for so many different types of people that even in the present, it's hard to get a cultural consensus, let alone 10, 20, 30 years from now when we're all trying to collectively share some memory of 2025, which I know is a bong rip of an answer. But yeah, it's hard for me to imagine remake culture of new stuff because new stuff right now is so often meant to be temporary and disposable and ephemeral. And I think that is why we see a lot of remakes of the same kind of core mythology of popular culture because they are established, right? The one thing that can break through all the sludge and the magic and everything else of the new are these properties that have already asserted their footing in popular culture. So that is all of Disney stuff, that is Star Wars, that is Marvel, stuff that is so big that is passed down like myths or like a religion from generation to generation. So in that way, remakes isn't a millennial thing. Remakes had existed before that. I just think that, yeah, millennials might be the last generation to have been alive where they were seeing a lot of new stuff be created that then got put into the remake pipeline. I don't know if there's a lot more room in the remake pipeline. It is kind of controlled by these forever IPs now, I guess. They're just going to be with us for decades more. I hope that answered your question. because it's a great one, and I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time.
Hey, Directional Joy here. Huge fan of Post Games, by the way. My question pertains to a Patreon exclusive segment where your family was introduced, your parents specifically, and it went into video games of a hobby of yours as well as a passion and just how they dealt with it as parents. And I wondered, if anything, what you took from either editing it, maybe something hit you, or maybe this is something that you've dealt with before privately and, just thinking about how you would be as a parent, how you could be supportive, but also potentially with you being more knowledgeable of the industry and where maybe the trends are going, some red flags, some things as a parent that you're concerned about, like how are you looking at it from the parenting angle?
I love talking to parents about video games. I often get asked, what should I know? What should I keep away from my kid? And I think there's a hope that I will have some hidden knowledge that is unobtainable without decades of caring about video games. But I truly believe the best thing a parent can do with video games is the best thing that they can do with any of their children's interest, which is just care about them, pay attention, watch them, enjoy it. I don't think you have to be an expert in video games to understand why gacha games or pay-to-win games could be a bad habit for your children, or that they shouldn't be gaming online with strangers who are, teaching them how to be neo-Nazis. I think the reality is if you take time to pay attention and to really genuinely ask your kid what they enjoy, to maybe play with them, to keep a conversation going, that's really the trick. And I think that is the advice that I give to everybody. It's what my parents did with me. They were always asking me about what I was playing. It wasn't like they were snooping. They seemed to genuinely be curious, even if they didn't understand 90% of what I said. And I'm sure at first I was probably cold and standoffish to them. But the amazing thing about parenting is persistence works. And they definitely showed that to me. Because if they asked every day, by day 20, I'm going to be chatting with them. I can't stonewall them forever. So I think the lesson that I learned is to care and to actually really spend time with them as they enjoy it, and not to use it as a low-cost means of babysitting, as this kind of distraction that I can give them while I do the dishes. There are a bunch of other things that we have that are distractions. Manga has been one of our favorites just because it really encourages our son to look at words on a page and flip through them. But when it comes to games, I am a firm believer in just spending time together.
Hi, Chris Want. It's Megan Verkmanish from Wired. You probably remember me as your favorite coworker from The Verge, or your second favorite coworker from Polygon. So, here's the thing. When I think about gaming culture, I think of it as a bellwether for general culture. Not always for good reasons. Gamergate really formalized a harassment playbook that we've seen play out across all sectors of the internet. And there are many reasons for this. Sometimes I wonder if it is just because there are a lot of young men that play video games that connect with each other online. And young men do have quite a bit of power in this country. But regardless of the reason why, I guess my question is this. Do you think that video games will continue to be the kind of canary in the coal mine they have been when it comes to figuring out which way the wind is blowing in our culture? I think we fucking nailed it. Okay, I think we got it. Cool. I cannot record this again. It is already over a minute long. Oh my God. Okay.
God, this question is so good and mostly so grim. I agree. I mean, I of course I agree that video games have long been the canary in the coal mine with popular culture. I think that is because there are a lot of young men, you are right, invested in this medium. I think a lot of the problems with technology often take place here first, right? It's a place that was getting a lot of people online and socializing with each other long before that was common. As a counterpoint to the young men who are part of it. It is a medium that attracts a lot of LGBTQ people. It attracts a lot of people who might feel unwelcome in a certain community. It attracted me as a kid as someone who felt like a bit of an outsider because of the way that I looked growing up with the birth defect. Those are all very different things, but I think it attracts people for so many different reasons, and that maybe creates an environment where we do get a bit of a microcosm of culture in a way we don't get elsewhere, in a way that we don't see with, like, sports, right? Everybody in some way is being pulled into the gamer pool, and we are seeing the friction that causes. I think that there is a tendency amongst some folks, I don't think this is you or me or probably anybody who listens to the show, but to fall into a doomerism of the only stuff happening in games, the bad stuff, when obviously, like, we know that that is not true. But the bad stuff is, yeah, sadly what has broken through. I don't know if we will see the future of stuff like Trumpism bubble up from video games in the future like we did with Gamergate. Mostly because those people seem to have moved on to other scams, other grifts. I think things like AI, before that NFTs, what we saw in Doge with people like Big Balls. I think people are starting their path into kind of bitterness and hatred in different venues now. Again, podcast, YouTube channels, than they were when it was starting with video games. Doesn't mean there's not overlap, but I think that's the new festering ground. I do hope that maybe we will see more positive movements come out of gaming culture. You know, AOC played video games. Mamdani played video games and seems to understand the reach of this community. There is a long history of positive social movements coming from games that Gamergate overshadowed, and a lot of that young male bitterness overshadowed, that I hope we will work out. One of the biggest questions that I do have for the young male contingency is the male loneliness epidemic, or whatever people want to call it. I'm sure there's a wide variety of opinions on what it is, how real it is, but I do think it's inarguable that many, if not most, young men struggle to communicate with one another, and they struggle to find and maintain friendships. And I hope that gaming can be one of the places to better solve for that, that can increasingly give people the tools to communicate with one another and communicate with themselves, to better know themselves. And I'm hoping that these sorts of games that are now available to everybody, I mean, you can play so many games about anxiety disorders now that you couldn't play when Gamergate was ramping up. I'm hoping that these games work as what they were always meant to be, which is experimental laboratories for the mind, that they will, I don't know, make people better. That's my hope. I don't know. I feel like very naive saying that. But I hope that the future of mainstream culture coming from the video games community is a positive one and not the negative one that we had to deal with for the past 10 or 15 years. I hope. For Patreon supporters, we'll get into the nitty-gritty questions about the future of video games. And for everybody else, we'll go right to my interview with Brendon Bigley about the new publication, Wavelengths. In the comedy business, there's a type of performer called the comedian's comedian. They're the comic beloved by comedy writers, spending every waking minute in a writer's room, wishing they had more time at night to be on stage. The comedian's comedian is a master of the craft, typically uninterested in the, quote, rules of the business. In the games media, the podcast Into the Aether has become the gaming podcast for gaming podcasters. Hosted by Brendon Bigley and Stephen Hilger, the weekly conversation is a chill, sprawling, heady breakdown of cool new games and old ones that deserve a fresh look. Its seasonal specials often feature a who's who of gaming media and culture. Now, co-host Brendon Bigley has left his day job at Disney to create a sibling publication, bringing that same craft, care, and charm to video game news. It's a tough but thrilling time to build a little camp on the periphery of games media, as I can now attest. So I was happy to hear from Brendon about his new venture, and I think you will be too. Hey Brendon, how you doing?
I'm doing really well today. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. Hey Brendon, I have a question for you.
Sure, hit me.
Why does the world need another video game podcast?
That's an incredible question.
Thank you.
First answer, I think, is probably doesn't, realistically. My second answer is, at least in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish, I think conversation around games has become increasingly toxic over the years. And I remember when starting Into the Aether, a low-key video game podcast, which has existed for about 8 years at this point, a lot of the experimentation leading up to where we landed with that show was finding a way to be able to talk critically about games, but also not trap ourselves in this position where we are constantly playing the newest, latest thing, which would always put us in positions where we would need to play things that we hated and get burnt out and not want to talk about or play video games ever again. So the conceit for Into the Aether was always, we will only bring games to the show if we like them, but that doesn't mean we can't be critical of them as well. So there's always going to be something nice to say, but we're not forcing ourselves into a position where we're just playing stuff we hate. And that means that we're playing stuff that's old and stuff that's new in equal measure, which is fun. Just doing as much digging through the back catalog as possible. So we've been doing Into the Aether for a really long time, and while I think there is that same kind of toxicity that exists on the internet when talking about video games as individual pieces of art, I think that's also true of news and of the industry at large. I think the ways in which people kind of dig their heels in to defend like whatever box is sitting under their TV has, it's always been there. The console wars, I think, were always this thing that the industry and the console and the platform holders in particular were like stoking the fires of purposefully because it allowed them to sell more units. But I think that that's kind of poisoned the well in a big way. And if you look at the comments on like any YouTube video or any TikTok or any Instagram reel or pretty much any conversation about the internet or any conversation about video games, rather, there's always the absolute like bottom of the barrel muck of it all. And I think after seeing what we've done with Into the Aether in terms of creating a community where people can talk about games critically, but in a way that doesn't feel reductive or in a way that feels like lazy devs or whatever, I wanted to try and do the same thing for news. That's always kind of been a white whale of mine. Those two things. If I can encompass both of those things, then I will feel like I've accomplished something.
That is why I'm so glad to have you here. We are introducing your new show, I Cucked Master Chief. And people should subscribe. It's a limited series.
Yeah. Only 3 episodes.
Oh, only 3. You really could condense it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard, yeah. Never mind. I'm not going to go down that direction. Who is the audience that you picture on the other end of your mic or your camera?
Okay, so Into the Aether we call a low-key video game podcast, which is one of those things that's like it's a little bit ambiguous, but you kind of know it when you hear it. You kind of understand what that means. And I spent a really long time trying to figure out what the tagline for Wavelengths was going to be. Like, what is the thing that is equally ambiguous, but the people who connect with it will connect with it? And what I came up with was video game news for the rest of us, which is one of those things where it's like, I think when you hear it, you're going to understand what that means when you're listening to the show, Again, it's not just like this is in the news and therefore we need to talk about it. And it's not just like trying to get people as angry as humanly possible, but it's like, let's be adults, let's be humans, and let's talk about this stuff, knowing that there's people on every end of it, right? I think that's one of the things that you've done really well with post games is this really broad and also really focused, simultaneously understanding that there are people as the touch points of every single piece of the industry. Like from top to bottom, it doesn't exist without individuals. And I think that's kind of the same thing I want to accomplish here, is that there's a person out there who is kind of tired of just hearing a rundown of literally every single thing that happened in video games that week, and is interested in like, what do I really need to know? And how do I get that in a way that feels like casual and normal and like I'm hanging out with real people and not like I'm listening to MSNBC telling me what the stock price is.
You've done Into the Aether, the show that you mentioned, for, 10 years will be here soon enough.
It's creeping up.
Mm-hmm. What have you not been able to do through that format that you can do now?
I think really it just is news. Like news, we have had a lot of conversations. I co-host that show with Stephen Hilger. He and I met in high school. We've been friends for a very long time. We have a great time doing that show. And in the years of doing the show, I think one of the things that has really stuck out to the two of us is that we always want to find ways to expand into places that kind of make us a little bit uncomfortable. Like, how do we find ways to make Into the Aether a little bit bigger in a way that's sustainable and allows us to keep it up, but also not burn ourselves out? And pretty much every time we sit down to have that conversation, a part of the question becomes like, how do we work news into this? Some of the most fun stuff to do is talk about a new Nintendo Direct or whatever. And we could never really crack that nut. That was just a thing that I think the two of us could never really figure out. Like, how do we make the Into the Aether version of news and fit that into that podcast when we're already spending anywhere between 2 and 17 hours talking about video games on any given episode? It's like, we're going to talk about news for another hour. And truly, and I don't think he'd mind me saying this, but like, he's not as passionate about the news side of it as I am, Stephen. So like, I think just because I'm a real sicko who is like extremely plugged in to my own detriment, I want to be able to siphon all that stuff out and filter it out to the listener.
I want to talk about your life because
Sure.
You have everybody has their own unique journey into this.
Yeah.
First question for you. Is college overrated?
Is college overrated? Oh man, that's really tough. I think in some ways, yes. For me, extremely. I dropped out within the first 6 months of being in college, joined a band, toured the Eastern United States. And honestly, great education doing that. But also immediately when that was over, like, most bands, at 99% of bands, we broke up right before signing a record deal. And what that meant was that I immediately started working at a Blockbuster right before Blockbuster went out of business, et cetera, et cetera. And very quickly was like, I need to figure out a life for myself. Because what I learned over the course of going to high school and then being in college very briefly is that that's just not for me. I teach myself a lot of things. I don't consider myself to be a person who is not well-read or whatever because I missed out on going to college. The only thing I really missed out on is making some of those friends and networking and connections in the film industry because I was in film school. And I haven't once regretted missing out on those film industry connections.
What parts of your career have brought you to this point? Because you did end up, it wasn't just Blockbuster. That's was true. Many steps along the way.
Between then and now, I would say a lot of it just stemmed from a general interest in the games industry. I just have been basically forever. That led me to writing for a now defunct video game website, trying to start my own. In between there, launching a bunch of podcasts, which didn't work out. And just trying things over and over and over and over again, honestly. And meanwhile, all of those skills that I built up, doing all the side stuff, not even doing career stuff, led me into working for a podcasting startup where I learned a lot about podcasting. And I think getting pretty decent at it, enough so that I felt like I could, coach other people into making better podcasts. And then that job led to working at Marvel and then the Walt Disney Company at large, where I was running YouTube strategy for Marvel and Star Wars and Disney and Pixar and Disney Plus. And that was also an unbelievable amount of learning. And all of that kind of wraps up into what I'm trying to do with Wavelengths is how do I take the collective sum of everything I've learned from my career and apply it to a blog, a YouTube channel, and a podcast simultaneously, which is a lot of work. But
this is where I will plug the Patreon segment. I'm going to be talking with you about kind of your tips for making a beloved podcast as somebody who literally has been doing it professionally, not just for indie things, but for Marvel. We'll get to that. But you have had an interesting, I would say, unique relationship with games media. And that you're kind of inside it, kind of outside of it. Your day job is outside of it, but you are in the media content world, especially when you were at Disney and Marvel.
Yeah.
from that perspective, what is your take on a current state of things? In games, I should say.
In games and games media, or just games?
Games media specifically, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm watching a lot of things I loved crash and burn in front of my eyes is really, I think, the kind of high level of it. But as much as that is horrible to watch, and I really feel for everything that's happening to everybody across all of these places that are being shuttered left and right, I'm also seeing a lot of new, exciting things pop up constantly. Post Games is a great example. I just saw Ralph over at SkillUp launch This Week in Video Games as like a great new website. And there are all of these other new newsletters and podcasts and websites and YouTube channels and everything popping up left and right from all of these people who have been unfortunately laid off or whatever from whatever games media site has been shuttered this week. But I'm enjoying also watching all these people realize, like, I'm the person with the power to make something great. Like, I am one facet of what made this website work in the first place, and I can take that talent and apply it to my own work and prove my own skill out in the world. It's exciting watching that shift. It's exciting watching people whose work I really admire be like, I can stand on my own 2 feet and I can make this happen, and I don't need a giant conglomerate behind me to make that happen. And that's realistically, to be clear, I mean, it's like being a stand-up comedian. Like, it's not going to work for most people, I think, but there are some people out there that I'm watching launch a new thing and I'm like, you're going to nail it. Like, there's no way, you know, I just, some people I know just have like the wherewithal and the tact and the strategy to make this stuff work. And it's really exciting watching that happen.
So people subscribe to the show.
Yeah.
And like, what are they going to get over the course of a month?
Totally. Yeah. So the Patreon specifically.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're a subscriber to the Patreon, you're getting a lot of stuff. So just mentioning the stuff that's free, I think off the rip, like the podcast is free every week. I'm making videos on YouTube every week. There's a blog that I'm posting on constantly as well. And that's just always going to be available for everybody. And then on the Patreon side of things, if you like the podcast, whenever there's a video episode, it'll be there as long as my guest is comfortable being on video. I'll record video and they'll get a video version of it, which is cool. But I also have a bunch of other like series that I'm doing as well. So I have a thing that's kind of like the Giant Bomb quick look thing, which I used to do for Into the Aether and is now behind the paywall for patrons for Wavelengths. Anytime I'm doing like a full Let's Play, say I'm like reviewing a game, I will record the entirety of that playtime and upload that as like one big video. I just did that for Metroid Fusion. I made a review of Metroid Fusion and recorded over the course of a week my Let's Play of Metroid Fusion, which was fun because I got COVID halfway in. So you can see me like halfway into that game, like dealing with my own parasite while fighting Parasite X on the Biologic Space Laboratory spaceship. But that's there as well. And also just like early access to a bunch of other videos and archives of streams, which I'm doing constantly as well. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. And I've been working really hard over the past couple months to make sure that like the day it goes live, there is so much stuff available for people to watch immediately.
How do you avoid burnout as a creator? Because you are one person. You are making all of this stuff. Yeah. How do you sustain that?
It's a big question, and one that I've come to the answer of via just like testing this a couple times over the past couple of years. So I would say the first like real run I made at doing Wavelengths, I did probably around 2023. I was like, I'm going to give myself 2 months and I'm going to try to juggle my 9-to-5 job, Into the Aether, and Wavelengths simultaneously. And for Wavelengths, what that meant was streaming more and posting at least one video a week, like one long form video a week. And it did not work very well. I burned out really, really, really quick. I tried it again last year and had new strategies for how I was making videos. I was trying to streamline the production process to make sure that I could like do it very quickly. If I had an idea, I could get it out the door really fast. And I thought, if I can make the production process fast enough, then I can sustain this. And once again, I did it for about 2 months and I was like, that's not going to be it. And the conclusion I eventually came to was I needed to cut something out of my life. Because I also, it's worth mentioning, started another podcast with my friends over at Mac Stories in the middle there called NPC, Next Portable Consoles. It's a podcast about handhelds and handheld gaming. So I was like, I've added another podcast to the mix and I'm trying to do Wavelengths. I need to cut something out. And the thing that was the scariest, but made the most sense to cut out was my 9-to-5 job. That was really tough. and took a lot of prep time. Like, it took a really long time to get to a point where I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to take a chance on it and see how it goes. And that led me to where I'm at now, which is, oh my God, the hours of 9 to 5 are now mine again. And I'm so stoked about doing this stuff that I really just like rocket out of bed every day and start working and don't stop until the day is over. And it's so far been great. Like, my work-life balance is better than it ever was at my full-time job, which is a really nice feeling. And I also am like really proud of the work that I'm doing every day. And that's a feeling that is hard to come by, I think, when you're working for other people.
What's the scariest part of making a new publication? What's the thing that keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think one is the fear of burnout, right? Like, there is the question of, can I keep this up? Like, right now I'm really driven and motivated, and I, again, like, am so thrilled to be able to do what I'm doing. On the other hand, like, it is a lot of work, and I'm just hopeful I can keep it up. On the other hand, and no shade at all, but like, you're coming from a pretty large place with a pretty big spotlight on you, and then launching post games. And it's really cool that there is that immediate support that comes with that. And I have a little bit of that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not starting with nothing, right? Like, Into the Aether exists, NPC exists. Into the Aether, I think, in a large part, was successful because of the podcast I had before Into the Aether. Like, all of these things lead to all of these other things. But I am not a person who had the platform of a larger publication. And the thing that I think keeps me up at night, more so than anything, is this question of, there are always people online who I think want to be games journalists or want to be working in the game space and are very vocally upset about anyone who is doing it, and constantly asking, like, why do you deserve to be there doing that? Why are you the person who gets to do this? And my basically entire career in this space has been me trying to prove that I belong here literally just by doing work on my own in my own little corner for as long as possible until somebody believes me. And this is a much larger version of that. Like, this is a much more public version of that than ever before, I think. And that's the thing I think that is the freakiest, right? Is like, not only am I at the whims of many different algorithms, but I'm also at the whims of the people that the algorithms push my stuff out to, who have never interacted with me before in my life. Because getting somebody to listen to an episode of Into the Aether is difficult. There is a huge hurdle to get there. We specifically named that podcast something that would be hard to Google, so you needed to put a lot of effort into getting through the door, because by the time you get there, it would mean that you're probably going to listen to at least an episode, and by the end of it, you'll probably like it. That is not the case with Wavelengths. With Wavelengths, I am posting short-form video on platforms driven by algorithms literally every single day, and that is putting me in the crosshairs of a lot of people who are very angry on the internet all the time. And trying to convince those people to stick around is really tough. It's really tough. That's the thing, I think, more so than anything, that keeps me up at night. How do I win those people over?
With all of this in mind, what's your dream scenario for the future of Wavelengths?
I have some larger ideas. Like, right now, I feel very good about the amount of work that I've taken on. I would love to eventually get to a point where, like, I don't need to be in the weeds editing. Like, as much as I am fine with editing video and audio and stuff, and have enjoyed doing that in the past, like, Into the Aether became 100,000% more fun to do on a weekly basis when we hired our incredible editor, AJ, who has become more of like a creative partner than anything else. And I would love to get to that point with Wavelengths as well, which would then free up more time to do some of the larger, more ambitious projects that I've been working on. I don't want to get too into the specifics, but like, I have like a 30,000 word script for a video that I don't know if I'll ever have the time or wherewithal to make. I just don't know if it's going to be possible, but maybe it could be in that realm. Like, I did research for like a year. I played through a game like 5 times. Like, I really put a lot into it, and I have a couple other games I want to do that for. And like, I would love to get to the point where I could release something like that. Yeah. I just don't know if that's possible at this point, but maybe eventually, maybe in 5 years.
Well, it's like you said, your entire journey is the stepstones, right? Like, it's...
Yeah, exactly.
Start with a podcast, multiple podcasts, make the social content. Like, I think that it's admirable and wise because it's realistic. Like, it is how most things work. I think that sometimes there's an approach that can happen on the internet, which is it's the assumption of the overnight success, right? Without seeing all of the things that happened along the way. I think about that with Jenny Nicholson and her channel coverage of theme parks, and it can sometimes feel like, well, it was just overnight. And it's like, well, no, Jenny was making other videos.
Go sort that channel by oldest and see what she was working on and for how long. No, you're totally right. Having been in multiple bands and, you know, adjacent to the music industry for a little bit, like that was a thing that was constantly being challenged, I think, in the music industry. You know, I think Charlie XCX is maybe one of the best ever examples. Like, you know, she was releasing remixes of other songs on MySpace literally a decade ago, if not over that. One of my favorite songs from her ever is called Super Love, and I bet she would cringe so hard if she heard me say that. And now we're in a world where Brat is like the biggest, well, was last year, I guess, the biggest thing to have ever happened to pop music. That's just how it works, man. And like, I'm just going to keep working until I hit my Brat era, baby. I don't know.
Where can people find all of your stuff? Where should they go to subscribe?
Yeah, I think the best place to go is wavelengths.online. That's the blog and that's the hub for everything. If you want to go directly to the YouTube channel, it's just called Wavelengths. You can type that in. And the podcast is also called Wavelengths. But all those links are just on wavelengths.online.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining.
Dude, thank you for having me. And thank you for being on the first episode of Wavelengths as well. I really appreciate it.
For Patreon subscribers, I've got one more bonus segment for you. Brendon stuck around to talk about how to make a successful podcast in the year 2025. It is possible. I guess the trick will surprise you. It is a great bit. We go into a whole bunch of stuff. Stick around for it. And for everybody else, we'll get to the news. Act 3, the news of the week. You can now read hundreds of thousands of words about video games for the low, low price of free. There's a small caveat, though. The words are from the 1980s, and most of the games go beep and boop. But they're good words, and honestly, they're good video games. The Video Game History Foundation has acquired Computer Entertainer, one of the first video game magazines ever, and almost certainly the first video game magazine run by women. The publication ran from 1982 to 1990, making it one of the very, very, very few publications to remain active during the video game crash. The entire volume is now available online for free on the Video Game History Foundation's digital archive, along with many other video game publications like Game Informer, Game Pro, and more. Elsewhere, I reference Digital Foundry more than any other video game publication. The team, which includes veteran gaming analyst Richard Ledbetter and John Linneman, is the source for technical breakdowns of video games. Want to know how a new game runs? Curious what tricks developers used to perform graphical magic in the 1990s? Just enjoy listening to knowledgeable media veterans sharing behind-the-scenes video game development expertise? They do all of that, and so much more. And now, they will do all of it independently. Digital Foundry has bought itself out from current, well, I guess now previous owner, IGN, after years of being passed around between different ownership groups. The initial plans sound wonderful, for gaming sickos like myself especially. More retro gaming breakdowns, a new team member focused on timely PC coverage. It's great stuff, and I am so excited for them and for us. And lastly, a new BioShock is coming out. One day. Earlier this week, Jason Schreier at Bloomberg reported on the long, troubled development of the new BioShock game. Responding to questions from IGN, Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick said of the next BioShock, It's going to come out. That I can say hand on heart without question. We have had some ups and downs along the way. That is accurate. And we have had changes in studio leadership. I have a feeling we're going to be waiting a while. But that's okay. I hope the people working on that game are able to finish the project that they've always dreamt of. And in the meantime, we have plenty of other games to play. And that is the news of the week. I am closing the mailbag for today, but do not worry. I will be opening it regularly for bonus segments. So, if you have questions, please send a voicemail to postgamesmailbag@gmail.com. Remember to include your name and pronouns so I can properly respond, and keep questions under 90 seconds, please. For folks who I wasn't able to respond to this episode, I'm hoping that I will be getting to those questions soon. So thank you for sending them. And one other place you can follow Post Games, or Mini, I guess. We are now on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm making shorts at this point, and they're just another way to get more Post Games in your life. Next week, a Broadway composer's quest to make a murder mystery video game. I'll be chatting with my pal, Mike Petrie, who has composed hit musicals, performed in the pit of award-winning Broadway shows, and orchestrated the music for comedy specials like John Mulaney's Sack Lunch Bunch and Co-op the Musical. If you don't know what any of those words mean, that's okay, because Mike is creating a riff on the rise of the Golden Idol formula set in a local community theater. And so long as you like video games, I think you'll like this one. But for now, I begin my farewell. A reminder, post-game supporters get the show and the newsletter early on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern or earlier. They get extra acts and bonus materials. This week, Patreon listeners got extra predictions for the future of games and a conversation about how to make a successful podcast. Some info that I could use. And each month, subscribers get a video in my ongoing series, Video Game Journalism 101. The third episode went live on Monday. It is about the weird, ethically messy world of video game preview events. And there's no ads on anything. Subscribe to the Patreon at patreon.com/postgames. Subscribe to the newsletter for free at post.games. Postgames logo by James Barham, theme by Mark Sparling, and a special thank you to this week's guest, Brendon Bigley, along with the many folks who sent in their questions, including my pals Maddie Myers and Megan Farukmanesh. Very last thing, if you like the show, please consider sharing it with a friend or leaving a review. I see you folks still leaving reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and I appreciate it so much. We are still so early in the life of this program, which I would like to do for decades. And you can help make that happen by supporting the show on the Patreon or leaving a review or really just sharing it with more people. It means the world to me. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next week.